all the incredible faculty, and especially the graduates. I remember sitting where you guys are now. Back in 1998, being the youngest member of my graduating class at 21 years old. I was sitting next to the oldest member of the graduating class. I don't remember how old he was, but I think late 40s, early 50s. And we both felt that we had that feeling of pride, that feeling of success, making it through to graduation. I had gone 9 terms straight with no breaks, and I remember how important that day felt. So when I got the invitation to speak today, I was obviously very flattered, but I realized that some of the Art Center staff might have gotten the wrong impression about me. If there are members of the faculty who are hoping a real rock star would show up, I'm so sorry to disappoint, and I'm happy to discuss some form of refund or compensation after the ceremony. But I've never been much for the rock star thing. I've never trashed a hotel room, I've never done hard drugs, I don't wear face paint, I've never bitten the head off of a live bat. But I've been on tour with people who have, and I can tell you from first-hand experience that people in my line of work don't make the best public speakers. For those of you who don't know my music, we are a band made up of 6 somewhat awkward guys that made its name screaming, "Shut up when I'm talking to you," and flailing around on stage with dyed hair and spiked bracelets. Played on stage with everyone from Metallica and My Chemical Romance to Jay-Z and Paul McCartney, and I've never spoken at a graduation. I do, however, talk on stage a bit when we play live, but usually the people that I'm talking to are so hyped up on adrenaline and sometimes other stuff that I might be able to say nearly anything and they wouldn't really care. They're there to hear the music, so they'll put up with the talking. In preparation for today, I assumed the crowd was likely to be slightly more sober and probably more discerning. Or not. With that said, I had some homework ahead of me, so I did what most desperate people would do. I went online to look at what smarter people have said. I found that most commencement speeches are about 2 things. Number 1, giving advice about how to transition your student career into a professional career. And number 2, instilling a sense of hope that the future will be full of success and happiness. But I ran into a problem. It's a difficult time to get up in front of people to assure them that they're going to get a great job and make a difference in the world. Jobs are more scarce than they used to be. Money is a bigger problem than it used to be. And all of you are painfully aware that the world is facing some tough times. One of the most difficult places to be is at the back of the unemployment line. So it may be perfect timing that I've been given the platform today to come as a person experienced in the world beyond these walls and give you this important piece of advice that I echo from your valedictorian, Hugo. Stay in school. Just give them the diploma back, turn around. There are many great reasons to be here as a student at Art Center these days. People know you're busy, you can wake up, don't need to change clothes, you walk around wearing the same thing you've slept in for a week. And instead of kicking you out, they'll give you discounts on movie tickets. And besides that, you guys kind of have a disadvantage as far as competing with the guys that are out there hiring. They have a different skill set from you guys. The people that are hiring right now actually have no college degree at all. Bill Gates was a dropout, Steve Jobs, dropout, even Michael Dell and Richard Branson, and surprisingly Simon Cowell have no college degree. So apparently the fact that you actually are going to have one may work against you. However, if you decide to disregard that advice and leave here today to explore the big world beyond our Art Center's walls, maybe even try and make it better, let me at least give you 2 suggestions about how I think you should proceed. Number 1, I would say don't be afraid to take a non-traditional route. I'm making this suggestion based on a great deal of experience. Back in high school, there were certain things that I dreamed of doing. One of them was designing album covers, doing album packaging. Little did I know that in order to design my first album cover, I would have to start my own band and get signed, which seems a strange way of going about being a designer. Another thing I dreamt of doing when I was in high school was putting out a rap album and playing the songs on stage. But in order to do that, it turns out I would have to go on tour for 5 years sharing stages with heavy metal bands like Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, and Marilyn Manson. Before all of this started, I would have imagined that to be a bizarre path. I was eventually able to release that album, that rap album, under the title Fort Minor, and share stages with people like 50 Cent, The Roots, and Jay-Z. So the bottom line is this. The path to your goal is sometimes less obvious than you think, so my advice to you is to keep your eyes and ears open for anything that seems exciting. I find that following inspiration, even in directions that might seem odd at the time, will lead to exciting results, and those exciting results reveal other new opportunities and inspiration. It's a very enjoyable cycle, and I recommend it to all of you. I said I had 2 suggestions, so here's the second one. If you want to be happy with your work, get your fuel from the inside. Do things that you like to do and put your own excitement and interest first when it comes to creative decision making. I'm not saying to ignore other people's input. Keeping your eyes and ears perpetually open for constructive criticism and suggestions is the only path to mastery. But I'm telling you to remember that your integrity is not for sale. I want to put this point in perspective with a short story. Or maybe a medium-length story, but at least it's not a terribly long story. Back in 1996, when I started my band with a friend, recording demos on cassette in my parents' house, our goal was to make music that we wanted to hear that no one else was making. After playing shows around town and getting turned down by literally every major label and some of the smaller ones, we eventually got signed and began recording our first album. For those of you who don't know what an A&R representative does, let me explain because it has bearing on the story. An A&R guy, someone who works for the label, the record label, as a liaison between the label and the band. He oversees the album from a semi-creative standpoint, but really his job is to make sure the artists are doing something that is going to make the label money. So in the middle of making our first album, Hybrid Theory, when we thought everything was going well, our A&R guy, let's just call him Mr. A, started getting panicky. See, a new guy just got hired as Mr. A's boss. So Mr. A was afraid he was going to lose his job if our album wasn't a success. So Mr. A started obsessing. He started comparing us to bands on the radio and TV and realized that we didn't sound or look like them. So Mr. A decided that we needed to fix that. He essentially told us that he no longer liked our sound. He said it was too introverted. Furthermore, Mr. A wanted us to ditch the rapping, and he suggested we find a gimmick because a lot of other bands were doing so. For example, at that time in 1999, there were in 1999 there were bands who were known for having certain facial piercings or wearing a certain colored hat or painting their face or body. There were even bands who made a gimmick out of having erotic dancers on stage. And knowing that the chances of breaking a new band are 1 in a million, Mr. A said that we needed to do these things to get noticed. He even threatened that if we didn't make these changes, the record company would shelf our album, which was the equivalent of locking us in a dungeon and throwing away the key. The label had our names on a contract which stated that we weren't allowed to make music for anyone else. They had the sole right to release our music as a band or as individuals. So if they decided not to put our album out, we would never again be able to release music. We had a decision to make. We had been working tirelessly on our music for years, and we'd been given an ultimatum. Either make the changes that Mr. A proposed, or throw all that work away and leave music alone entirely. The threat of having something so important to us taken away was horrifying. We knew